Hi everyone, Danny Bader here, and welcome to another episode of Back to Life, our podcast where I interview people from all walks of life to hear their stories and the insight and wisdom they've gained on this wonderful journey called life. So enjoy the episode and be sure to pay attention to what inspires you to create more happiness and fulfillment in your life, because that's what we're here for, right? Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 30 of our Back to Life podcast. I'm your host, Danny Bader, and I'm always excited for the guests that I get on the podcast that can offer you some things to consider on this journey of life. And I'm very excited today. We have Tabitha Scott, and Tab and I have been friends now for, what do you think, Tab, 5 years, 6 years maybe?
Yeah, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, 5 or 6 years. Tab's based in Nashville, and our paths crossed down there when some of my friends went down and pursued some country music, and we've gotten together, anytime that I'm down in town. So happy to be there with you, And also, I feel like I've kind of been on this journey with you as you've written this book. So today we're going to talk with Tab about a book that just came out. It's doing very, very well on Amazon in the work-life balance. Any of you struggling with that right now? And it is called Trust Your Animal Instincts, Recharge Your Life and Ignite Your Power. So Tab's going to give you a little bit of her background, and we'll get into conversation. Tab, thanks a lot for joining us on Back to Life. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Danny. And you said, you've been along for part of the journey, but actually you were a huge part of inspiring me that I can write a book. I can get it done. And yeah. I remember picking your brain and saying, just how do you get started? How do you narrow it down? And,
right.
Were hugely helpful and impactful for me. So thank you for that. And your message
my pleasure.
As well.
That's my pleasure. Yeah, I'm so glad you did it. The book came for me. I was away. I just got back home, and I flipped through it a little bit, but really looking forward to diving into that one this week.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's do this, Tab, so people can get to know you a little bit, because I think we're all inspired by the journey and the stories of other people, as you and I have spoken about many times. The book, as I see, is broken down into 3 parts. And the first part, for everybody who's listening, the first part is from spark plug to burnout. That's kind of interesting, right? So I thought maybe you could start to talk about that. And then we'll move to part 2, tuning in. You got a really interesting journey in the literal sense that you took, and in the philosophical sense, I guess. And then part 3 is powering potential.
Right.
And I think part 3 is where our listeners, our audience, is going to get a lot of what they can take from you and your wisdom and your insight. Sound good?
So that sounds great. The first part of it and a bit of background, I grew up in small town Kentucky with 2 parents that were elementary school teachers. And so they were very much into teaching us about things as we went. My mother was always teaching me about animals. Every type of creature has a purpose, just like every human has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They had a very strong faith background as well. We were kind of 3 times a week churchgoers in those days. And so it was important. They impressed on us on a small farm that you work hard for what you want. And if you wanted a bicycle, you sold greeting cards and you bought it. If you wanted to go to college, you worked as an operator at night and you paid for it. And so that ethic was really, really good, throughout the rest of our life. And I brought something for those of you who might be watching visually, because I visited my folks for their 60th wedding anniversary yesterday. And here's what I found in the basement. There's this picture of this cute little girl and a fluffy kitten. And this is called Big Little Kitty. And she's so cute and nice and in a little pink dress.
Yes.
And what you think of with little girls, and spark plug to burnout. I was kind of a spark plug, and this is what I had in the basement for me.
Yes. Knowing you, that makes perfect sense.
This is a Planet of the Apes coloring cut and color book.
Right.
So little known fact, I actually made them call me when I was about 3 years old, Urko, which is this big gorilla character here.
I remember.
About a year, so it's even on my birthday cake. I don't remember.
Oh my gosh.
So it was, I always would make up these challenges and adventures, and I had 4 horses, 3 chickens, which I taught to shake hands, a duck that walked sideways, a couple dogs, a couple cats, and an older sister that was, much better behaved than me.
Yes.
growing up, mom was very patient and kind and caring, and dad was very impatient like me, and very competitive, one of those coach dads.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had rules like there are no such things as mistakes, only stupid decisions. And so it drove this perfectionism, and those things that make us super strong in business and excelling in business sometimes make it a little hard to let people close to us or to show our emotions and feelings. I was kind of raised in that you suck it up and you move on. If you want it, you work for it. And so that led to the spark plug, and always pushing the boundaries, always, inventing things and playing with my animals outside. It reached a point where I ended up having a career at a very young age. I was CEO by the age of 30, and then went on to have some corporate experience in a couple of large companies overseas. Mm-hmm. And what made me that great executive, being able to wall off the things that were happening around me, or maybe negative things, and not experience it or feel it, made me a very powerful and rapidly growing executive. But it made it very difficult to keep from burning out. And so right. A lot about burnout from that process, and that we do have to stop long enough and acknowledge what's going on in our lives.
Sure. So you grew up competitive, right? You played basketball and you were out there hard charger, and then that carried over high school, college, business. So type A kind of workaholic?
Type A perfectionist. And okay. It's funny because, Danny, I use this term, we end up shoulding on ourselves a lot when we're perfectionists. Well, I should be better. I should be faster. I shouldn't let them see me sweat.
Right.
And, in the book, I coin it as the should monster. And right. We all have those in our lives, whether it's ourself and our own pressure, and type A's are the worst at doing that, or it's people from the paradigm that we grew up with. You need to always follow these rules that you were raised with, or you need to be like everyone else in the office. And what I learned is that should monster is obnoxiously real, and those pressures we put on ourselves, that's what leads to burnout. If what we want to do and what makes us happy does not align with what we're telling ourselves we need to be and what others are telling us we need to be, that's what leads to burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into that more on the back end. So just to give the listeners, the audience a picture, there you are, Kentucky farm girl, hard charging, all the success in corporate. And then what happened? That maybe lead us to part 2 of the book?
Yeah, that leads to part 2. Both of my sons had serious illnesses that were incurable with his knees, and went from competitive goalie travel team soccer to wheelchair bound. And, one of the blessings that came out of that is he found his art. He's now a brilliant glass blowing artist in St. Louis. And he may have never found that if he hadn't kind of been, looking for other things to do besides play outside with the other kids. The other son came down with narcolepsy as a teenager, and had always wanted to be a pilot, and his plans changed dramatically. And being that type A, I can do anything if I just work hard enough, and not being able to fix that for them. I couldn't fix that. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah. You hear that so much with people, especially in that competitive type A long trail of significant accomplishments. And then they come up against that thing that they can't control, they can't fix. How do you think that relates to people right now as they deal with the pandemic?
I think it relates directly to people that are dealing with the pandemic, because everybody is feeling off right now. Everybody's feeling uncertain, and there's a good reason for that. We're actually made of energy. And the book talks a bit about our background of quantum science proves that we are definitely made of energy. If you're a religious person, it goes back to the Bible, and it says we're made in his image. The ultimate source of image, would be God in that sense. And so science reinforces spirituality. Yes. And the book is not you don't have to be logical or emotional, scientific or spiritual. You can embrace all of those things because they all fit together.
Right.
And energetically, what's happening is people are feeling off because there's so much negativity around us. We're
Mm-hmm.
and negativity is a low vibration emotion.
Yeah.
And it literally pulls from us. That's the second law of thermodynamics is, if you have a higher vibration, it will go to the lower vibration to fill it. And so that's what's happening to us. And you have to protect yourself. Book talks about how to put up a shield and protect your energy.
Yeah.
And man, you got to watch what you're tuning into.
Right. Yeah. And I want to definitely get into all of that. So that's a good precursor for anybody listening right now. Hang on. And, as you're listening to this too, don't just listen to this for yourself. Certainly share this with anybody else where you go, hey, Danny had a great guest tab on, you got to listen to this. So keep that in mind as well. So you burn out, you're dealing with personal challenges and all, and then you go somewhere. Where'd you go?
Yeah. So I reached a point in both, personal life, things were going on. And then with career, I worked in renewable energy, which is not popular with a lot of Americans. And so it was this career of trying to convince people, hey, we need to clean up our air. We need to make things healthier because it's causing cancer, diabetes, asthma at prolific rates. And there was the burnout of not being able to fix that either. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I just reached a point where I was asking the universe, asking God, hey, what should I do? And I kept seeing snakes. Mm-hmm. And over and over again, more snakes. And my friends are laughing and we're all Googling. And one day it hit me, shed your skin.
And where are you when you're seeing the snakes? Are you still where are you, Nashville?
I was still in Nashville. This is this was the catalyst to leave and get out of town. So these snakes, I got this message like shed your skin, which you shed your skin to get rid of negativity. They have parasites in their skin that can harm them. So for me, those were all the shoulds I was putting on myself and the pressure, shed it. And the other thing was they shed it so they can grow, so they can move into what their potential, because a skin on a snake, they can't grow any bigger till they get rid of it. So I quit my job.
Plus they have those, that's very interesting though. Hold on, because I didn't realize, I thought that was just a process of them growing. I didn't realize that there were parasites in the skin as well.
Yeah, it's not molting like you would another animal. They actually have parasites in there that are harmful. And isn't that what happens to us? We let people take advantage of us. We allow things that people to say to get to us. We allow this fear and uncertainty of coronavirus to eat it and eat our energy and create fear and uncertainty. You got to shed that, get rid of it.
Yeah. So the parasites for us as people, that's a cool analogy. And I'll probably continue to talk about that. And I'll certainly reference my friend Tab as I do when I offer it to people, but it's such a good analogy because you think about what are the parasites that we have? Absolutely. Well, and we're going to talk about our beliefs too. It's some crappy stuff we have in our head. It's some poor choices that we're making on a perpetual basis. It's allowing other people to treat us and bring them. It's interesting too. You said when you're in a state of high energy, you're going to go to the low energy to fill it. And as soon as you said that, my mind is just thinking about some things going on for me and some people and all. So that's
the language. Think about our human language, right? You're around people and we talk about energetic states of being in our language all the time. She sucks the life out of me.
Oh yeah.
That person is so draining, or, what a burnout. Yep. Think about our language.
Right. And the opposite of that is when somebody walks into a room, they go, man, they just light up the room, or I just like being around him or her. They put off a good vibe. Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people, they go, I just don't feel like I have any energy today. Yeah, it's definitely in our vocabulary for sure.
It is. And so people haven't looked at it through that lens. And that kind of gives you, Danny, throughout my career, I've always worked with engineers or technicians, people that are very logic-based. And for me, I could understand spirituality in a logic-based framework because that's where I came from. The suck it up, show me the math background. And once I understood, these are vibrations and feeling great and being positive, those are good vibrations and low vibrations. Once I got that and then understood how physics comes into play, like if somebody puts a political post on social media that you don't like, what do you want to do? You immediately want to say something back. And what you end up doing, remember those balls in physics class that hit each other and canceled each other out?
Yeah, yeah.
Third law of motion, where an equal and opposite reaction, and that's all that happens. And that's why we're not getting anywhere in our political system today, is because everybody's just using equal and opposite reaction instead of finding that is already emotion that everybody wants, like, safe families and love and well-being and security and health. Those are things we can all get behind. And so from a motion perspective, getting into action, wow. What if we could find more of those?
Yeah. Yeah. And not even find really, but create, right?
Yeah.
Right. Create them intentionally versus finding, just hoping that we find something. We need to be intentional and creative. So you went then to Costa Rica.
I did quit my job, shed my skin, put my house on the market, gave away most of my things, a pretty radical approach, and lived in the Costa Rican jungle, far from paved roads. My cell phone, never worked where I was staying. So,
yeah. And how old were you then? I mean, what year was this?
This was 2017.
Okay. So the boys were grown, they're older.
Boys are grown and gone. So I was empty nesting, all by myself, just finished a pretty major surgery with a cancer scare.
Yep.
And I'm like, forget it. I'm getting out of here for a while and reconnecting and figuring out what is next.
And you went alone?
I went alone. Yeah.
So you went deep into the jungles of Costa Rica, and I've been down there just once, more so towards the coast, but I know it's pretty desolate. What was that experience like for you?
It was wonderful and fearful, and I learned so many lessons, and I reconnected at such a visceral level with the animals in the wild, with nature, and definitely that relationship to reconnect with the spirit had never been that powerful. I can remember times as a kid, maybe riding my horse, and you have that feeling of invincibility and that just passion welled up inside, like you're on top of the world. And that's how I felt when I was in Costa Rica in the jungle, sweating it out on the trails. And I'm a runner. So, getting hot, doing a lot of yoga, it was fantastic.
And what do you mean when you talk about connection with the spirit? Because you and I have had conversations, and we're kind of kindred spirits on that journey. But what do you mean by connection with the spirit?
Yeah, what I mean, because I was raised in a Christian context, and everybody's born into different contexts and different paradigms, but the one that I was raised in was Christian. And so when I say the spirit, I mean God, ultimately. I also mean our own intuition, which I think is the voice. And sometimes, they call it the Holy Spirit, and in some Christian sects, and others, they call it the Spirit. But bottom line, his wisdom is out there and available for all of us to tap into at any time. And that intuition, from a business perspective, you look at Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Branson, Elon Musk, all of those billionaires credit their intuition with their success.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we can totally listen to it. And the way you do it, it's so funny. People like us that are high energy, you might be a better meditator than me, but I can't sit still, like cross-legged.
Right.
And think for a long period of time. But for me, I learned running or doing what makes you happy, what resonates with you is going to be different than what's good for me. It might golf for you, and for me, it might be hiking.
Right.
And so I think what I write about and what I found there is I can still tap into things. Now, maybe it's not at the level of a guru, but we can all tap into our intuition. We can get our messages from God, and all we have to do is get ourselves happy and hear it. Right.
Yeah. I always say it's often in the absence of stillness or the absence of sound that we hear the most, right? Absolutely. So how do you create that? And you were kind of forced 3 months. You had really no technology connection to the outside a lot, right?
Right. I would go to the nearest village and get on Wi-Fi at one of the restaurants there to connect most of the time. So.
Yeah. And what do you think is, because, we've talked about it, and one of the Jackrabbit principles is be still, right? And certainly with our Christian background, I think it was Matthew or one of those book, be still and know that I'm God, is in there, over 100 times. So if people, because for some people, right, the logical people look at this and go, what are you crazy? I got a to-do list, man. I can't, all this bullshit. I can't sit there and just meditate and everything else. Although it is gaining tremendous traction right now.
Yeah.
I think U.S. meditators, the number has tripled since 2012. And the demographic of people that are growing is around 40 to 65. So you think about, when does life's challenges really start to smack us upside the head? It's usually around then, right? We lose people. We go through divorce, jobs, financial, kids, those life change units. What would you say to somebody about if they go, I just can't do it. I tried it once. I don't know how to do it. What would you offer to them to consider to get them practicing being still? And what would you say is the top value? Why should they do it?
I would say, and this is going to fly in the face of what a lot of other people might say, but what worked for me is becoming exhausted and getting in the woods, getting out in nature. And there is evidence, scientific evidence, that if you spend, I think it's like an hour and a half or more, and you don't even have to be there, you don't have to leave your home, you can watch videos of the forest, of trees, that there is literally a reset in your brain that happens when you're taking in nature. And for me, it's getting tired to where I can listen and hear.
Right.
And I don't have crazy brain going on.
Sure.
And the other thing is paying attention to what you love. When are you getting goosebumps? Like, who's singing? What are they doing when you get them? And writing a list of those and keeping those like on your mirror when you get ready, near your workstation. But the closer you can get to that feeling, the more you're in tune with those higher powers.
Got it. So you go down to Costa Rica for 3 months. You do any other learnings down there? The title, Trust Your Animal Instincts. Any other animals show up for you down in Costa Rica where you go, oh, there's an interesting lesson to consider?
Man, I had so many animal lessons in there. And I think because as a child, I had animals and I always resonated with them. And we talked about the snake a bit. The owl is on the cover of the book because the owl taught me about tuning in. The owl can literally move its head 270 degrees, and it's shaped like a satellite dish, kind of this big bowl, so that it can hear more accurately. And it's tuning into what's going to make it grow and thrive. And so we need to pay attention. I was tuning into all the things I couldn't control and and shooting all over myself. And that was not working for me. And so focusing on tuning into how grateful I was. Your mind can't be in gratitude and be desolate at the same time. It's not scientifically possible.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You just said I was tuning into everything I couldn't control and shooting all over myself, right? I like that term. That's good for people to listen to, right? What can you control? I think in the coronavirus times now, and in life many times, I talk with people around that concept of surrendering, but we're so conditioned to think surrender is a weakness. And they say, well, no, shouldn't we fight like hell? I say, yeah, in many cases you should fight like hell, but you got to know the times when you don't, because as you're talking here, I always say, if you focus on resistance and your energy is in resistance, then there's not an opportunity for resilience, because you've got this limited energy, right? Absolutely. And focus, which I love, I think it's our greatest commodity. The definition that I like of focus is the concentration of attention or energy on something.
Absolutely.
So it's not about time management. It's about what the hell are we focused on? Absolutely. And we're most conditioned to focus on the negative outcomes and fear, and this is not going to happen, this is not going to work out, and all those other things. Yeah. What are your thoughts around that?
You bring up a good point about time management, and I know that you do a lot of work around that. And what we're focusing on is kind of everything. If you're focusing on, I'm never going to get through all of these emails, I'm never going to catch up, I'm never turn on the news, we're the virus, there's no cure. If you focus on those things, you can't move forward. And there's a reason why they call it frozen in fear, because think about energy and water in its regular state. If you slow it down, if you bring it into a slower vibration, it turns into ice. You get frozen. And that's where that phrase comes from. And I think it's just really important that people are realizing if they are focusing all of their energy on what they can't do, then you can't take the risk of moving forward.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. I hope everybody hears that out there. What are you focusing on? Just sit for a moment, listen to what Tab's offering you. And if you had to grab a piece of paper or maybe do it and just say, where am I placing my focus every day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's that voice in my head? Because that's your focus, right? Your thoughts are your focus. So really think about what you're focused on. And if it's a negative, if you feel not good about that as the outcome, what would the opposite of that be? And then to hold that as a focus for a little bit, right?
Think of yourself, and you said something else, Danny, that really resonated with me about you only have so much capacity of your energy. So it's almost like if you were a little personal energy generator and you let too many people suck energy off of you, you run out and you don't have enough for yourself. So that's literally what's happening.
Yeah. And that's the definition of resilience, the one I like, because I'm doing some webinars for companies on that, like a 90-minute, the path of resilience. Resilience is the capacity to move through challenges or difficult times. Mm-hmm. So when you think about capacity is a volume, it's a measurement, right? So if we've got that capacity to handle the difficult times, what happens, like you said, when that energy gets sucked out of us by other people, by politics, by the election and all this other fake news and everything else, that's impacting us. That's impacting the individual.
Absolutely. And that's why the passion for me with the book, mm-hmm. I didn't set out to be an author. I set out to say, how can I help as many people as possible with my life and what I've learned? And it is absolutely around that concept of doing what brings your energy up, find what brings it up and fills that level back up. Like you were talking about, the book is called Recharge Your Life and Ignite Your Power, because we can recharge all day long and that spirit is available there to do it. Yeah. But you have to focus on those things. I call them amplifiers, because you're literally amplifying your positivity mm-hmm. of things you love to do. Mm-hmm. It might be playing golf or watching baseball or, mm-hmm. Going for a run or spending time with your kids or cooking brownies.
Right. But anything that puts you in that higher state. So you stayed in Costa Rica for 3 months alone, right?
Almost 3 months. I did bring a friend down for part of it. And I think that might be a lot of people's favorite part of the book, are some of the adventures that we took.
Oh, cool.
It's safe for me to drive around the country. And so I did invite someone down to spend some time with me for a couple of those weeks. And
I got it. I like it. Good. So then you come back, you get a job. So you work now in corporate America, can I say, right?
Yes, I'm back in corporate America, but from a very different context. Mm-hmm. I'm supporting strategy at Tractor Supply Company, and it's very much behind the scenes. I don't have letters after my name. Mm-hmm. I'd like to stay in the background.
Yeah.
And, just do a good job, because for me, it's about focusing on getting this word out into the universe. It's about keeping people positive.
Right.
And a lot of my work there is with mentoring and doing work with the leadership teams there about balancing their energy. Do they have all people that are risk averse on their team, or do they have people that are stimulated by change, Mm-hmm. And so energy is not just about emotion and recharging ourselves. It's about getting alignment with what you love to do.
Right.
And then making sure it aligns with your job, that you're assigned each day, because if it's not, that causes burnout. So burnout can be emotional and personal, and it can be at work. If you're put in a position that doesn't fit what you're naturally energized by, you're going to be drained and burn out.
Right. So is that the definition for you of burnout? Engaged in activities that don't naturally energize you? Is that safe enough to say?
Yeah, that is a great short definition of burnout. Mm-hmm. And you see it happen over and over. If you put someone in the opposite situation of what they love, they can do it for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. But eventually they're going to snap back to what they enjoy doing. It's
right. And that's both, like you said too, I really like that, both personal and professional.
Absolutely.
So if I'm in a relationship with somebody and we're just not engaged in activities that kind of give me a good high, so to speak, the natural high, that's where the relationships are going to struggle, I suppose, right?
Yeah, there's a tool called the AIM Cube, and it actually can map you along the S curve. And me, for example, understanding I'm way extreme. I love change. Like it's exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm seeing someone, in a relationship capacity or working with someone that is extreme risk averse, they're going to help me a lot from if like before I do my taxes, I better have one of those types of people review it first.
Yeah, right.
As far as having someone to go on adventures with or, be willing to take risks with, you need to think about things like that. So,
yeah, that is cool. That is really cool. So, I know you're doing great work there in corporate America, and I think that's cool that you did come back with a whole different perspective. So what I'd offer the people listening right now is can positive energy, a sense of personal fulfillment on this journey of life exist in big corporations? And I would say absolutely, right?
Absolutely. It can exist anywhere, anytime, and it's not up to anybody else to give it to you. That's
perfect. Say that again, right?
Yeah, man. It's how you deal with it. You can't handle, it's out of your control what happens to you. It's up to you how to react to it.
Yeah. I know one of the things I just I call bullshit on a little bit is that sense of employee engagement. It's up to the organization. We've got to get our employees more engaged and all that. I'm like, no, you have to lead from a good place of values and appreciate them and everything else. But I think more of it's to the individual to be engaged. What's your thought on that employee engagement term?
Yeah, I think you can have an environment where people feel comfortable to engage and facilitate that, but it's up to everyone. And those tactics, I mean, literally you can use energetic tactics like judo, right? Where you use an opponent's strength against them. If there's a bully at work that, is always angry, then try asking him a question next time they're attacking you in a meeting in a sincere way. Hey, that's really interesting. Could you say more about how you could do that better?
Yeah.
And it will freak them out. It totally, you've just, it's like a transformer in electricity. You've taken their power and shifted it somewhere else.
Yeah, that's so good because all they want is resist, right? They just want to keep banging and banging. And you're kind of just going, oh, cool. Tell me more about that. And they're like, wait, you didn't push back. Yeah. And then they go, well, I can't push back, right?
It's kind of fun when you're in the corporate world and you really start practicing. Since I got back from Costa Rica, I've really started practicing to refine how is it that you can leverage your own energy most powerfully and stay positive most often. Yeah. And just watching and observing the dynamics of people in meetings where, you have those opposing energy forces and trying to get them all on a common ground.
Right. So Tab, we talked about the snake shedding the skin. I love that, the parasites, and I'll certainly think about that in my own life. The owl, right? The radar, the ability to kind of see the whole environment almost, very similar to the jackrabbit whose eyes are up and far back. So you and I kind of choose animals that give us that awareness in life. And I heard you talk not too long ago as you were promoting the book that's doing great on Amazon, by the way, about the scorpions down there. And the scorpions kept showing up. And then your message from that, and you help me if I'm not getting it right, but they have that hard shell. And you were kind of thinking about, all right, maybe the message for me then, for us, is what happens when we drop that shell, when we drop that defense mechanism. So how important or not, your thoughts on being vulnerable, asking for help, realizing that we all screw up, and versus having that big shell so that nobody can kind of see what's going on for us? What are your thoughts around that in personal and in corporate?
Yeah, I think there's a reason Brene Brown is so popular with her work on vulnerability and courage and fear, because I learned it the hard way, and I'm hoping no one else has to go through the things that I did because I resisted so long feeling any emotion. I mean, I probably cried, I could count them on one hand, the times in my adult life and child life up until the time I went to Costa Rica. And that shell was so hard. It was a barrier I had built up around myself versus putting up a shield and then putting it back down. That's why warriors use shields. They can put them up when they need it and then put it away. Where if you build a barrier around yourself, your love can't get out and nobody else's can get in.
Right. Yeah. So true. Yes. Love the energy we're going to talk about here shortly. I wore my new shirt, Lead with Love, right?
Yeah.
LWL, one of our Jackrabbit shirts that
I
benefits
need one of those.
ALS research. Yeah, you got to jump out and grab one. And then we donate 20% to ALS research up in Boston.
Oh, that's a great benefit. I'll put that on my site.
Yeah, that's a good one. We've got a couple out there. So let's move then into that part 3, powering potential. And specifically, belief drives everything, belief in the spirit, belief in self. Talk a little bit now. Let's take, we've got another 15 or 20 minutes here. I think you and I could probably talk for a long time. What can people do that are listening that they can do right now? 2, 3, 4, maybe give them 5 things and let them choose 2 or 3. If they feel like they're in a funk, if they wake up and they go, well, you know what? I'm feeling off. Am I depressed clinically? Do I need meds? No, maybe. And if anybody's listening and you think you do need, then pick up the phone, call somebody, see your doctor. But what I've heard is there's just a tremendous amount of people that go, man, this is just tough. Mm-hmm. This is like the roughest time I've ever been through in my life. And it is for most of us, probably.
It really is.
What about beliefs?
First of all, the most important thing at the beginning of that, because you mentioned feeling depressed, feeling down, I think the first piece of it is the tuning in that we talked about. Mm-hmm. You're tuning into and being careful, to stop allowing those pressures on yourself and try to shift into positive. The second thing is believing in what I call the spirit, believing in your intuition and trusting it. We've all got that feeling in our stomach when we walk into a room sometimes, or maybe you see somebody and every time you're around them, you get that sick feeling in your stomach. There is a reason for that. And people tend to ignore it in the West, whereas in Eastern cultures, they welcome it, they listen to it, and they even, teach about our personal energy, our personal space and respect. Mm-hmm. And here in the West, we tend to force ourselves to ignore it. Right. And as you said, what do I think about those things like vulnerability and emotions? I learned that those things that I focused my whole life on, which were driving, achieving, controlling, making things happen, are much less powerful than listening and surrendering. And it sounds crazy, but you can explain what's happening energetically because you're spending all of your energy into doing other things versus receiving the wisdom and guidance from the spirit, and then listening to your own intuition versus trying to please, the checklist of the corporation. And you're missing it. You're missing the joy in every minute of every day by not taking in what is inside. So I think that's a huge thing for us to do.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people out there, and I would just offer it to them, no judgment, that are hard charging like you were, driving and making money and building wealth and everything else. And I remember I wrote in my book, Back to Life, about that's all well and good. That's fine. Do that. But just take a look at the process by which you're going about that. Yeah. And that's what, because I know you, Tab. I mean, that's what anybody listening right now is going, wait, but I'm doing great. I love business. I wake up in the morning. I have such a passion for it. I love making money. I like doing deals. And Tab, you're telling me to do things that give me good energy, and they do. So then you're just offering maybe that they would slow down a little bit and see if there's another piece there that would complement that process.
And you know what? I'm glad that you teased that apart a bit, because if that person is truly stimulated by those deals, then they are working on their passion already.
Yeah.
So, like for me, at the beginning, working in renewable energy, it was such a passion. And still today, I want to help the environment and help animals and people as much as possible. So that's a passion, and I'm going to be happy doing it, whether it's, your work becomes play when you love what you do.
Yeah.
So it's not, I want to be clear that I'm not saying your job is something, or, working hard might make you feel bad. I'm saying if your work is not aligned with your passion, then reevaluate. And also always being in action. I could not listen because I was always busy asking, hey, what's the answer? What's the answer?
Right.
Versus stopping and allowing. And that's so hard for hard driven doers.
Yeah. But you see so many people too successful, millionaires, billionaires. I'll read all the autobiographies and all. Branson and Oprah, some of the other people you talked about. I don't know about Musk. I read his, but I didn't know. But so many of them have incorporated some type of still practice, meditation, yoga, journaling, whatever. And they're still out there, driving $100 million deals and $1 billion deals and everything else. So I think it's key for them. People say, hey, keep doing what you're doing over here. And is there an opportunity for you to explore a little bit of unplugging and disconnecting?
Absolutely. And one of those other steps that I would really encourage people to take, and I think men are better at doing it naturally than women, but taking risk, because a lot of people will hear their intuition, but they won't act on it. They won't do something with it. Mm-hmm. There's a good friend of mine who grew up in Ohio, and she talks about having this memory of her childhood home. And she said it was such a wonderful, idyllic childhood, except for two things. And one was this ugly mirror that everybody hated at the end of the hallway. And it was so big, like it was just kind of a pain. So nobody moved it, took it out of the house. And it bothered them. They didn't like it. It just made her uncomfortable. And the other thing was her grandmother was in a wheelchair, and, my son was in a wheelchair a good deal of time, and taking them up and down steps, it's hard. It's hard on you. It's hard on them. And her grandmother would be in tears, by the time she would get in or out. And her grandmother passed on, and eventually they sold the house. The buyers made the sale of the house contingent upon removing that mirror. It must have been really bad.
Really?
And so, upon the sale, they brought in workers and movers and took the mirror out. And what was behind it was a door that led directly to the driveway with no steps. Now, it had been covered up with wood on the outside, so no one knew it was there, but yet every person had the intuition that that mirror's bad, there's something, and you're not going to know what it means. You just have to trust it, and that's scary for us to go out on that faith. And so when I said the spirit was telling them, move the stinking mirror.
Yeah.
And, believe in self means trust yourself. There's a reason I feel off about the mirror. And that's where we have to take the risk to do it,
Yeah. So really key there, and you use the word a lot too, as I do, trust versus hope. Because hope is like you're just sitting there waiting, hoping something's going to work out, versus being intentional and saying like, trust this.
Yeah.
And trust is, and we have another t-shirt, IAGBO, Iagbo, it's all going to be okay, which is trust. And people go, well, how can you say it's going to be okay? I said, it can be okay for two reasons. It can be okay because you agree with what's going on, or it can be okay because you accept what's going on. So if you look at it from both ways, it's all going to be okay. And I think it's really powerful that you talk about trusting. And your trust really comes from that gut, because there is risk associated with it, right? If the logic says, I do this deal, everything's great, I take this job, there's no, to trust it. It's the facts are laid out, it's where there's that margin of, and that's I think what shows up in your belly, right?
I think exactly what you're saying can be explained. Abraham Hicks has this expression of when you're paddling upstream, and you can paddle and work against that stream, and the faster the stream is flowing, the harder you have to work. And it makes us feel like we're doing something, but if you let go, then everything moves faster. And it's that act of letting go of the things you can't control and trust in what you can control. Yes. Trust that the outcome is going to happen. Yes. And those two things go, hand in hand.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so important. So important. So let's talk about energy, and that we're made up of energy, right? So I want you to give kind of and I know that's a big question to kind of unravel. We could talk just on that, but maybe just give us, when somebody goes, what do you mean we're made up of energy? I mean, I got bones, I got fingers, I got hair, and we have our heart and our brains and our lungs. So why don't you talk about that for a moment, and then I'm gonna have a follow-up question for you. Just kind of give a general overview of that.
So here's the nerd side of me, that I wanted to write something that was spiritual and heartfelt, but that logical people could read and point to science and say, oh, that's what, tuning in means. It's literally like a radio frequency that you tune into, a high vibe or a low vibe. And quantum science proves that we are all just energy. When we were growing up, it was atoms are the smallest thing. And atoms are made of energy. So is every rock and tree and animal. And so studying renewable energy and having, energy engineering designations about electricity, and then studying when my sons got their illnesses, I started studying energy healing, ancient energy healing from the East, from the Hopi Indians, as well as from NASA physicists. Because when you view your body as an electrical thing, just a quick sideline, you mentioned the Bible earlier. In the Bible, it refers to God and Christ as the light 272 times. So, we are energy, and we're from him, from this ultimate source of energy. So whether you call it God or prana or chi, every place has a source of energy.
Right.
And we can tap into it because we're made of it.
Yes.
We get distracted because we're born into different paradigms. We grow up and we look different. We act different. We have different definitions of success. But you know what? When you look inward, we are the exact same energy. And I think that's what we're missing in society right now is we forgot, dude, man, we're the same.
Yeah.
So I might have goofy curly hair and, yours is short and, you got a stronger arm than mine, but man, we're the same at our
and our source. And that is what I pray and I trust that our world will move more towards. We have a way to go, but I continue to pray and trust that we start to engage with one another in that way, that we are all from source and we're all connected. And I know it to be true. You and I have talked about it, but my heart, my brain, my lungs, and anybody that listens, you've heard me say this a million times. I need them. They make my body go, but there's another source of energy. And when I died, when I was 28, that energy went and was joined with it. I'm reading a book now from a neuroscientist, Proof of Heaven. And he was very much against anything. He said people, when they die, they're just having some type of a response, a neurological response. But then he had this experience of the afterlife. And he talks about that joining of, and he didn't talk about the light too much. He talked about that energy going back to that very peaceful, still darkness. And that was my experience. So yeah, I'm with you on the energy thing, the energy concept, the energy reality, that we've got to engage as human beings in things that put us into a more positive, resilient state.
Yeah.
And then we also have to know that ultimately there's an energy source that's out there that's bigger, but is also in us. And that's pretty powerful. Makes me smile.
I thought of you actually when I was writing part of it, because Einstein said energy is not created or destroyed. It just changes forms. And that explains everything that happens in your book, the different states that you were in, but your energy was still there. It just changed forms during those times. And I'm sure that your listeners have read your book, but when I repost this on my site, I encourage everybody to get it because it really reinforces that notion, and it reinforces the afterlife, and it reinforces how it's possible logically. So it takes it away from, well, that's storybook. I just don't buy into that. There's no believing in it or not believing in it. It's just fact. The energy has to go somewhere. It's just like water can be a cloud or it can be, in the ocean.
Right.
Still water.
Right. So how could people, let's take a couple lessons. How could people shed their skin? If they go, yep, I get that. What does that look like for somebody?
So I'm gonna use one animal analogy with another. So to shed your skin, you can be like the bat. When I did yoga in Costa Rica, 7 bats would come and hang near me and like do their little chirp thing. And I looked into bats, and what I learned is they can't fly. They have to be hanging upside down, and they literally can't take off from the ground. They have to let go in order to fly. And so until we are ready to let go and, just leave it all behind us. So shed your skin, let go, you can fly.
And that's cool. I like that. And I saw, it was cool when I was flipping through, I saw the bats. So what would be, letting go? What does that look like? You left your job, right? So that was letting go.
I left any kind of, anything that I couldn't control. And that's an ongoing practice. And it's not easy. I mean, I'm not fluffy cakes all the time, but I sure am a lot happier now than I was before, because I can't take the burden on of how someone else feels.
Right.
I can do everything I can to love and support and help, but focusing our energy on the high vibration things like love and compassion versus hate and fear, because it doesn't serve us. It hurts us more than it hurts other people.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So letting go is getting out, removing yourself from any situations or people. I'm just trying to kind of make it real for folks. Removing yourself from any situations or people that don't give you a good energy.
Yeah. And if you can't, I mean, obviously sometimes you're trapped with people or situations that you can't get out of, and that's okay. It's who are you being about that? And you can use your shield. Sometimes I worked with ER doctors when, the pandemic first hit, about putting up an invisible shield, because the stress and uncertainty was so high that it was emotionally affecting them. And so thinking about an invisible shield where things just go around you versus I'm going to take in what that person's saying to me. So oftentimes we're stuck in a situation, maybe an abusive situation or a job that you're not loving. But guess what? You can find some nugget to learn from that. You can learn from the contrast. These are the things that I don't love. And so let me go try to find more of things that are opposite of this. So you can still learn from it.
Right. Oh yeah. I've had a lot of people that their job just consumes them and they're so miserable that they don't have the energy to engage in a lot of good things on the outside. Right. And then once they start, they go, oh, my job's not too bad.
So yeah, find a way to make it, and ask for what you want. That's something that people don't do. And every time I've had a major promotion, I've asked for it. I've gone in and said, here's what I'll do for you. These 3 things. If you don't like it, and I don't do it by 6 months, fire me. Be willing to let go so you can fly and take that risk of asking for what you want. You might not get it. It's the first thing that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
You get fired. You didn't like the job anyway.
You just trust you're going to create another one for yourself, right?
Right. And getting to ground zero, like what is the worst thing that happens if I try X? What is the worst thing that happens? You're not going to die,
Right.
If you leave your job or if you spend another day there. So then work backwards from that. How is it a little more positive and a little more positive? And just finding incremental habits that you can change to make it just a little better.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So so the book, everybody, again, is Trust Your Animal Instincts, Recharge Your Life and Ignite Your Power. Some tremendous wisdom in here. I look forward to jumping into it. I did get into it a little bit, but just knowing you, I know that it's going to be a tremendous read, and it will be one that stays on my bookshelves. I don't keep too many anymore because I caught myself, I had a bunch of books and I thought, why do I have all them? Like I wanted people to come in and say, oh, look at all the books. And then I thought, let me just hold on to a couple of the ones that really kind of get me going. So where can people get more information about you, follow you, Tab Scott?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Tabitha A. Scott, Facebook, all of the usual places, but powering-potential.com is my website, and there's a free introduction download on there. And Amazon.com has the book and a couple of videos you can, click on to learn more about it. So check it out on Amazon, powering-potential.com.
Okay.
Hit me up.
Yeah, that's great. So anybody thinking about that, if you need a little inspiration, you need to kind of examine your energy and what you're doing and how you're living and what you want to create for yourself as we move through this pandemic, the book would be a wonderful resource for that. Also think about other people in your life that might need it, because gift giving, right, Tab, has got to be a good positive energy, right, when we give.
Right.
So grab one for yourself and maybe grab one for somebody else that might be in need of just slowing down a little bit and kind of doing a little bit of a reboot.
Yeah, it's for me, Danny, and we know each other well enough. I think the same is true for you. It's about helping other people learn from what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's getting the word out there so that people don't have to go through that same burnout, so that people that feel isolated and alone and unloved, so that people that have never felt unconditionally loved can know that they are, and that they're not alone, and they have just as much power as you and me and anybody else right there inside to tap into. So it's much love and care that I just want to help.
Yeah, no, I get that about you. And I'm sure our audience did. Well, this has been great. So here we go, Tab. I got one more question for you. You can provide some parting wisdom for our audience to consider. If you're going to lunch with somebody, right? And you're going to go have a nice lunch and you're never going to see this person again. And they say, all right, Tab, I wish you all the best in life. And you go, yeah. And they go, but just Tab, what 3 things, what 3 principles, what 3 pieces of insight and wisdom would you offer for me that I should take with me on this journey? What would they be?
Well, I'd say, first of all, dude, stop shitting on yourself, because that's not helping you out any. Right. Then I would say, tune into what's positive and helpful for yourself. Tune into when you're feeling really happy, when you're subconsciously humming, what are you doing? Think about those things, write them down, and repeat them. So listen to that intuition. And when it's talking to you, listen to it. And finally, I would say, take the risk. Let go. Shed your skin so you can grow into all of your potential, everything that you can be. And you can't do that till you take a little bit of risk. So step out there with courage, be vulnerable, and we're here for you.
Yep. Give yourself a little hug once in a while too. I like to wrap up at the end of my podcast episodes, but I think you just did it for me. That's really what resonated for me as well. Those 3 things, right? Let go of some things, shed your skin. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't let that should monster. If you think you should do it, just do it. Just go and do it, and trust that it's going to be okay. Or as you said, if it isn't the outcome you want, you're still going to be okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I fail so much. I've had so many dreadful things happen. And, I say that to exaggerate, but when we first started the podcast, my background was all squirrely, things happen, and you're going to have to figure it out. I'm still figuring out a lot of the technology with doing my own little videos, and you got to take the risk, and it's okay. Yes. People really don't care as much as we worry that they do.
Yes. And ultimately, I guess, as we wrap up from both of us, Tab, and I certainly want to acknowledge you and appreciate what you do for putting together a great book and for having persevered through your own journey so far. So I acknowledge you for that. And I guess the last thing we would both add is that everybody trusts that there is something bigger than us there. And it's a beautiful source of energy that loves us very much.
Absolutely.
You got it. Tab, I look forward to when we can travel again. We'll grab a bite in Nashville. Until then, I wish you all the best, and thanks again. To our audience, thanks for tuning in. Episode 30, Back to Life podcast. So if you're kind of new to it, there's 29 other ones there where we have guests like Tab that have had a wonderful journey and will certainly plant seeds of inspiration. And go like my Facebook page and be sure to share this with somebody else. So until next episode, wish you all the best. Tab, thanks again.
Thank you, Danny. Always good to see you. Tell everybody hi.
You got it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Back to Life. Our conversation sure got me thinking about some things that I need to pay attention to in my life, and I trust the same occurred for you as well. So until next time, each day when you come back to life, be sure to always be inspired.